The Ashtadhyayi on grammar. Panini's Ashtadhyayi. Till the 19th century, even Oxford and Cambridge recognized that it is the most definitive work on grammar with a universal application. Any field, Shilp Shastra. Have any of you seen? थोड़ा सा अपने दुनिया की संकीर्णता को एक फैलाव दीजिए, कभी चले जाइए, नेशनल म्यूजियम चले जाइए, लुक एट द चोला ब्रॉन्जेस, आपको देख के हैरत हो। अगर शिवा की स्टैचू है तो उसके आकार, साइज और क्या एट्रीब्यूट्स होने चाहिए ये लिखे हुए हैं शिल्प शास्त्र में, पर विद इन दैट फ्रेमवर्क द इम्प्रोवाइजेशन ऑफ द आर्टिस्ट, ईच स्टैचू इज डिफरेंट. It's a product of this country. Any area, even in the whole, our four Purusharths at that time were Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, and we have Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra. In any area of excellence, what I am trying to say to you is, please understand, to become Indian is not an Indian passport only, although that is important, especially if it has a US visa. To become Indian is to be aware and to be rooted in your culture. Because I began by saying photocopies don't enjoy respect. Photocopies are a convenience for somebody else. People admire the original. I was posted as director of the Nehru Center in London, succeeding Girish Karnad. And I was the first Foreign Service officer appointed to what was normally a political appointment. And I saw reactions of the British when they met not me, but others who were authentic Indians, who were aware. Then you deal with people with equality. Because unless you are aware in classical music, आप कर्नाटक म्यूजिक चले जाइए, आप नॉर्थ इंडियन चले जाइए, आजकल तो कर्नाटक क्लासिकल म्यूजिक भी इट्स बीन रिड्यूस्ड टू सम एडोलेसेंस पॉप परफॉर्मेंस. जल्दी 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 बजा के तुरंत तबले के साथ द्रुत पे आइए, था थिंत कर निकाल दीजिए. क्लासिकल म्यूजिक थोड़ा सा पढ़िए. देयर इज अ राग फॉर अ टाइम ऑफ द डे, द मॉर्निंग, द आफ्टरनून, द अर्ली इवनिंग, द लेट नाइट. There is a rag for the seasons. There is a rag for a mood. In the elaboration of the rag, if you listen to it consciously, you realize the correlation between what the rag stands for and the evocation of that rasa in your mind. And remember, no classical musician, unlike in the West, plays with a notation in front of him. No one who is playing a rag can go outside the parameters of that rag, and within those parameters there is infinite improvisation, that no rag is ever played back again in the same way. That is the great synthesis between rigor, discipline and the improvisation of genius. That is your inheritance. I went to Kailash, Ellora, and I was amazed to see that in the 13th century a temple has been carved to precise geometric proportions made by carving a mountain from top down, excavating 200,000 tons of stone, but carving it to precise geometric proportions. It's like a piece of poetry in stone, which stands there carved from top down. So why do we build Shastri Bhavan? What has happened to our aesthetic sense? Why do we compromise with mediocrity? It's the same civilization which produced this. If you go to Ajanta and look at the frescoes, and after the Muslims came, after the degree of the only just kuch mitti mein hai, the synthesis that occurred, the emergence of the khayal from the Drupad, The whole Ganga Jamuni tehzeeb that came about, of which the most supreme example is the Taj Mahal, where you see a synthesis of two civilizations merging to form one which is distinct from both. You see the Bhakti poets. मैंने वैलेंटाइंस डे पे कुछ स्टूडेंट्स से पूछा, इन वसंत विहार where I stayed, they were in a bookshop called Archie's. आप लोग भी जाते ही होंगे. तो they were buying valentines. One of them recognized me this morning. So I said, ये बताओ कि Valentine's Day is such a sweet, it's a harmless, innocent little festival. But do you know something about the love lore of your own country? Do you know the story of Laila and Majnun? Do you know about Radha and Krishna's romance and the whole Shringar poetry that has been written to it? Poets after poets, starting from Surdas, Jaydev, Govindadas, Chandidas, Bihari, the sublime poetry on their love. Have you read any one of them? Even in translation? No. Have you read Vatsyayan? Do you know who is Vatsyayan? No. When people are not rooted in their own culture, in other words, when they have not made the effort of becoming Indian, they are ultimately the most susceptible to being parts of a derivative civilization, a civilization that is not rooted in its own soil, and they become the best mimics in the world. There is a survey. I don't want to minimize or devalue the contribution of Indians abroad, and I have personally witnessed. There is brilliance inherent in your genetic setup. उसको पहचानिए तो. There is a survey in America which says that of all the ethnic communities in America, the Indians are the first to pick up an American accent. It did not surprise me. So what I'm trying to say is, the power of Maulik Soch is to become original thought, to be aware of what is wrong, to think about it in original ways, to think not only out of the box, but to think out of the system sometimes. Then you write Arthashastra. Then you construct a temple like you did. Then you have the efflorescence that you saw with Kalidas or the Bhakti poets or Guru Nanak's beautiful poetry of devotion. Then you see that. And we are capable of that. And I want to say to you, it's a surprise that when you are powerful, in not terms not of weaponry alone, although that is separately important, but in terms of your cultural rootedness, you become the focus from which your influence in other ways than merely conquest spreads across the world. I want to ask you, do you know where the largest Hindu temple is in the world? Angkor Wat. Not in India. I mean, if you go to Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Myanmar, you can see how many versions of the Ramayana are staged even today. Even the names of streets, the airport in Bangkok is named after our airports. The Champa dynasty ruled in Vietnam for 1,000 years. I was surprised on a recent visit to Bali how much was the influence of a culture. I'm not talking of religion, but of a culture. Actually, Bali must be the only place where there is one square where there is a statue of Bhima. So what I'm saying is that you become then. And let me tell you the power of original thought. That was Mahatma Gandhi. Think about it. Between Attenborough's Gandhi and Lage Raho Munna Bhai, or Dr. Munna Bhai MBBS. Expand your knowledge of Gandhi. Look at the power of Maulik Soch, the power of original thought that must have gone into this mind and his mind for him to come out with the weapon of ahimsa to fight a militarily superior enemy. It requires original thought. That was again in its own way as political strategy, a benchmark of excellence to which he gave a magnitude of idealism which we don't see anymore. मैं कल बोल रहा था कहीं, मैंने कहा वो लेवल ऑफ आइडियलिज्म नहीं, संभव नहीं है हमारी जिंदगी में और ना होना चाहिए। गांधी जी की जैसे थी कि ना परिवार है, ना कुछ घर है, ना फैमिली पोजीशन, ना गाड़ी का शौक, ना महल में रहने का, ना टीवी का, ना इसका, ऐसी भी जरूरत नहीं है। पर इसका मतलब ये तो नहीं कि हम बिल्कुल उस तरफ चले गए और कोई वसूल, कोई आदर्श, कोई प्रिंसिपल भी न रह गए। There is a middle ground. This is the resilient civilization. Find it. So what I wanted to say to you was that latest psychological research shows that your identity gets wired into your brain by a process of invisible osmosis by the age of 15. आप हैं कौन? हम अलग अलग पार्ट से हों. Somebody comes from Amritsar to Chandigarh. In Chandigarh they call him an Amritsari. Somebody comes from Chandigarh to Delhi, and in Delhi they say Punjabi. The same person goes from Delhi to London, they say Indian. कहीं से आए? We belong, and today in this century, as a result of a variety of factors, mobile telephony, television, consumerism, educational opportunities, job mobility, today India, which was a salad bowl at one time, has become a melting pot, and every Indian in any part of India has more than one symbol by which he or she can identify with India as a whole. There is a new pan-Indianness. You are an Indian. Now, as an Indian, you must understand your identity, not in terms of chauvinism or xenophobia. उसके भी आसार नजर आ रहे हैं और बड़े संकीर्ण दायरे के हैं कि जो मैं कहता हूं वही हिंदुइज्म है, आप नहीं करते तो आपकी हम पिटाई कर देंगे, उस दायरे से नहीं. But all of you are bright students, you will interact with foreigners. अपनी भाषा पे तो जोर दीजिए. Learn your language. Make the effort. I went to St. Xavier, St. Columbus and St. Stephen's. My first book, sir, was on Ghalib. I learned Urdu. कभी सीखने का मौका नहीं मिला. हम तो सांस्कृतिक यतीम थे, ना माँ ना बाप, ना संस्कृत सीखे, ना उर्दू और हिंदी. आज भी जो अंग्रेजी का प्रभुत्व है उसमें अपनी भाषा के साथ एक हीनता जुड़ी हुई. आप शताब्दी में चलिए, किसी से हिंदी में सवाल पूछिए, वो अंग्रेजी में जवाब देगा. कि ये मत समझिए कि मुझे अंग्रेजी नहीं आती. ये तो अद्भुत है. For a country so linguistically rich, in its own languages, 24 languages, with histories going back 2000 years, its own corpus, its own script. In the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, there is only one country with its own script, which is Ethiopia. And here is your country with 24 languages, and we are speaking something called English. विडंबना है. वाक शक्ति पर कितना जोर था. The clarity of language pronunciation. कुछ तो बदलाव होगा, परिवर्तन होगा, मैं मानता हूं. बट कुछ तो एहसास भी होना चाहिए कि we have become a nation of linguistic half caste. अपनी मातृभाषा से हम पिछड़ते चले जा रहे हैं और अंग्रेजी कभी हमारी मातृभाषा बन नहीं सकती. अंग्रेजी has a value as a language of communication, sir. It's a global language. We need to learn it. But your mother tongue is a language of culture. It opens the window to your folklore, to your folk tales, to your lullabies, to your stories, to your abuses. तो अपनी मातृभाषा से मत. How did I learn Hindi? First I began, I could have given this whole lecture in Hindi as well, but it was an effort because I first began to read. 2 अखबार में हिंदी के रोज पढ़ना शुरू किया, क्योंकि I was brought up to believe that to know English is everything. And that is what is happening. You must know English. But people say कि अगर आप अपनी मातृभाषा में निपुण हो तो आप फॉरेन लैंग्वेज भी जल्दी सीखेंगे. अगर आप आंख खोलते ही बाबा ब्लैक शीप कहने लगे तो आप किसी की दुनिया के नहीं रहेंगे. अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी ने एक दफा बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात कही. He said that it is a myth that the Britishers left India as a result of the freedom movement. They left because they could not bear anymore the massacre of the English language. चले गए. तो अपनी भाषा से हिंदी क्या? अंग्रेजी सीखिए, कुछ तो पढ़िए, get a knowledge, open a book. Ultimately, excellence is about being multifaceted. Don't be unidimensional. You all are such talented people, and in a globalizing world, I'll take 2 minutes more. If you ask me to stop, I can stop. In a globalizing world, please understand on the cultural side what is the danger. The danger is co-option, and usually the victim is the last to know. Before you know it, there has been a process of co-option whereby you have become a clone of another culture and you did not even realize that it has happened. This is what happens in globalization in the subtext of culture. Resist it. Be aware of it. Don't fight globalization, but fight globalization as you should be, as who you are. Then people respect. And for that you have to be a little more than merely your textbooks. वो जरूरी है ना. मैं रशिया में था तो प्रोफेसर came to me and said, Your Excellency, मैं बहुत परेशान हूँ. I said, what happened? He said, can you believe it that in my country today's very affluent young people don't want to speak Russian? So I said, why? Because I know how proud Russians are of their language. Even a child would have read, the greats, Tolstoy, Pushkin. I said, क्या बात है? Because हमारे यहाँ तो उल्टा है. You come out of school, you've read Shakespeare, you know nothing about Kalidas. That's the truth. तो वो कहते हैं कि ये बच्चे इतने such rich parents, these parents send them to boarding schools in Europe, to United Kingdom, sometimes to America. And when they go there as a result of peer pressure or because of that atmosphere, they are forgetting their own language. Sometimes they are ashamed to admit their own language and want to speak only in English. And I still remember the professor holding his head and saying, I think my civilization will die. Small things, I tell you. In Japan, one of the richest men told me, I'm worried, about the new generation. And I said, why? He said, because, and I'm telling you a true story, you may like to laugh at it. How small things matter. He said, the young generation have eating fast food so much that they have forgotten to eat with chopsticks. हमारे संस्कृति का क्या होगा? छोटी चीज है. हंगरी में एक स्क्वायर है. बुडापेस्ट में मैं गया था, तो पहले दैट स्क्वायर वाज फेमस एज द स्क्वायर जहां हंगरी के अलग अलग क्यूजीन्स देयर वर शॉप्स. So from this part of Hungary, that part of Hungary, and there was this thing about Hungarian cuisine. And I went there, and the Hungarian, my host told me, you know, Excellency, all this has changed. Now we have McDonald's, Pizza Hut, Kentucky's Fried Chicken. All our cuisines have been co-opted. It's easy to co-opt very young civilizations. You are the products of a 5,000 years. So you must be Indian without saying you are the best, but while knowing that you can be the best. Then the world will say, गालिब की एक शेर है, मत पूछ कि क्या हाल है मेरा तेरे पीछे, मत पूछ कि क्या हाल है मेरा तेरे पीछे, तू देख कि क्या रंग है तेरा मेरे आगे. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think the message of Dr. Pavan Kumar Varma's speech is very powerful. It is a message for us to introspect. Coming from an ancient culture which was distinct because of its ability to create original schools of thought and art and science, it is time for us to shun the intellectual laziness and slumber that we have slipped into. After listening to such a powerful speech, I am sure some of our students would have some questions in mind. So would you like to ask Dr. Pavan Kumar Varma any question? Can we have the mic for...
Hello sir, I'm Abhishek Paliwal. First of all, I would like to thank you for sharing your views on Indian mythology and what we should be doing in order to follow our traditions. But my question is that we get to hear about Indian mythology and what great traditions we had in a few functions that I had, like Foundation Day lecture or maybe on Independence Day, that our civilization was so great. Why isn't all these things are implemented in our daily lives? Why is it that, let's talk about our MBA education, right? We are reading whatever Europeans have taught us, like management skills, or maybe some John, or maybe Johnsons, or maybe sons of Johnsons, they have taught around 200 to 300 years back. Why not what Indian civilization was around, say, 2000 years back, when the population of India, which the rulers were managing, that was the population equivalent to the population of maybe more than the Europe, right? So it's because we are not exploring what our civilization was, and we are not implementing that in our today, education of today. So that's why we just get to hear of these things, and we are just.
Can we keep the question brief? So what's your main question?
So my question is that we should rather be implementing the our traditions, our great civilizations into the knowledge field, right, into the education system, rather than just praising that in a few seminars that we have. Right?
Let's hear the answer now, please.
Thank you.
From your question, I got the impression that my short speech was successful. Because at least it made me think. सबसे बड़ी खामी ये होती है कि we are not even aware of the superficial depths of our knowledge in extremely important areas, even while we can be products of excellence from exceptionally good institutes like this. So the fact that you asked me this question will take you forward to a journey of discovery. I agree with you that we can also institutionally strengthen the incorporation. But I'll give you an example. There is a school in Delhi called Bal Bharati. Till the 6th grade, sir, all education there is in the Hindi medium. It's a very coveted school. Admission is not easy. In fact, I know parents who can't speak Hindi who get their children there. But till the 6th grade, their education is in Hindi. And after the 6th grade, they pick up English and speak it as well as anyone else. Sardar Patel also. Sardar Patel School. That's a small change. But वो जो 6th grade तक वो जो पढ़ते हैं ना अपनी भाषा में, मैं सॉरी अलाउ में एक दफा प्रोफेसर अमर्त सेन मेरे साथ खाना खाए और उस वक्त मैं ये किताब लिख रहा था, तो मैंने प्रोफेसर सेन से कहा, आई वाज बीइंग प्रोवोकेटिव, मैंने कहा आप अपना इंडियन पासपोर्ट क्यों नहीं सरेंडर करते? You don't live in India, you married a foreigner now, you live in Cambridge or the United States. Why are you hanging on to this piece of paper? Especially because you have now elaborated a theory that there is no original identity, everyone has multi-identities, I am this, I am that and this. क्या आपको इससे? कहते हैं Pavan, I can't give it up. Then why? He says, no, please don't ask me this question. I said, but I will. Then he bent towards me and he said, you know, my problem is, my entire schooling was in Bengali and Sanskrit. I in fact learned Twinkle Twinkle Little Star from my wife later. Once you've learned your language, you can't give up your identity.
Anybody else got a question? Can we give the mic to Saraka and Mark?
सर, जेपी आंदोलन के गाने का एक शेर था कि तुम्हारे पैरों के नीचे ज़मीन तक नहीं और हद तो ये है कि तुम्हें इसका यकीन भी नहीं। तो सर प्रॉब्लम एक्चुअली हमारी जो जनरेशन है, जो अभी अभी 4-5 साल के बच्चों की माँ है हम लोग, और जो हमारी एज के पेरेंट्स हैं, अगर उनमें ये भावना अभी आ गई कि हमें अपने बच्चों को ट्विंकल ट्विंकल लिटिल स्टार से पहले गायत्री मंत्र या किसी भी धर्म का बेसिक चीज़ सिखानी है, तो शायद चेंज आएगा। क्योंकि जो जहर मैकाले ने हमारी एजुकेशन सिस्टम में धीरे धीरे फैलाया है, वो इतनी मुश्किल से निकालना, आसानी से निकालना है, मुश्किल हो जाएगा। तो हमारी जनरेशन आई थिंक शुड टेक दैट लीड टू टीच आवर चिल्ड्रन दैट नमस्ते उतना ही ज़रूरी है जितना गुड मॉर्निंग बोलना आना चाहिए।
Again I feel I've succeeded.
आपने एक बहुत अच्छा टॉपिक छेड़ा, जिससे कि हम लोगों को काफ़ी उपलब्धि हुई। ये बताइए कि इंडिया में जो पीजीडीएम एजुकेशन चल रहा है, उसके बारे में आपका क्या राय है? उसको कैसे इंडियनाइज किया और इंडियनाइज किया?
एक्चुअली मैं आपसे सच बताऊं तो मेरी जानकारी उस हद तक नहीं है सिलेबस के बारे में। एक चीज मैं आपसे जरूर कहना चाहूंगा, और मेरे निजी अनुभव पर ये आधारित है, हर चीज व्यवस्थागत नहीं सिखाई जा सकती, हर चीज करिकुलम में डाल के नहीं सिखाई जा सकती। हो सकता है चतुर्वेदी साहब कोई क्लासेस सेशंस करें यहाँ पे, इंडियन संस्कृति, भारतीय परंपरा, सम ऑफ थिंग्स ऑफ हिस्ट्री ऑफ कल्चर, पर बहुत सी चीजें कोशिश से और जो आपके इर्द गिर्द एनवायरनमेंट से उससे भी आती हैं। जैसे आपके सवाल से पेरेंट्स कैन प्ले वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल। अब एमबीए का मैं सिलेबस में नहीं जाता कैसे आ सकती, बट देयर आर मेनी थिंग्स। फॉर इंस्टेंस आई डोंट नो इफ एनीवन हैज मेड अ स्टडी of Kautilya's Arthashastra. in terms of management principles. I believe it's a valuable. For instance, I tell jurists, have you read the Nyayapalika? There are principles of jurisprudence elaborated there. Why must we only rely on British jurisprudence? Similarly, in other areas, I mean, we invite Corbusier to build a city for us. When he was actually sitting on top of a tree, when we had already built palaces. So, ये मेंटालिटी बदल गई।
सर, हम लोगों का कोशिश है, यहाँ पर तो आप अगर डिटेल में जाएंगे देखेंगे तो आप पाएंगे कि यहाँ पर हम लोगों का को करिकुलर एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज़ काफ़ी हैं जिसमें कि इंडियननेस इन्वाइट करने की कोशिश है। पर अब रहा कि सिलेबस में कैसे करें, कैसे हम इसको सिलेबस को जॉनसन से इंडिया में लाएं, वो चीज़ मैं पूछ रहा था कि उसमें कुछ
तो आप ही जवाब देंगे। जिज्ञासा हो, अगर जिज्ञासा हो तो मत फिर
सर, मुझे लगता है एक बहुत अच्छी शुरुआत अभी हो गई है क्योंकि मैं देख रही हूँ ज़्यादातर सवाल हिंदी में पूछे जा रहे हैं और शायद हमारे स्टूडेंट्स ने आज डॉक्टर डे को पहली बार हिंदी में सवाल करते हुए सुना है।
से तो ये काम आप अपने सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट में किया। मैंने देखा है कि आज इस ग्लोबलाइजिंग दुनिया में, I tell you honestly, I've seen it across the world. I've served even in a country like Bhutan when I was ambassador last. You'll be amazed how rooted the Bhutanese are in their own culture. When they have their archery, every Sunday their archery competitions, give them in the evening, within 10 minutes they begin to sing their folk songs. They speak in their own language. They can speak perfect English. They celebrate their... Because there's one thing unique about Bhutan which you don't know, apart from being a very beautiful country. It was never colonized. So, that effort has to come from within us. And do it in your self-respect. You will see that when you deal in a globalizing world with foreigners, their respect for you increases trebles when they see you as an authentic spokesman of a great civilization rather than merely a struggling republic. Remember that.
I think we have time only for one more question. So, can we... Yes.
Good morning, sir. Good afternoon, sir. The question is, how much we are defined by our political ideologies? Where we are right now and where we are headed, don't you see some kind of extremism in where we are being shaped or where we are possibly in going in future? And how can we be indifferent to that and be ideal? Thank you.
It's a danger. When this great culture and civilization falls into the hands of people with limited intellect and largely illiterate knowledge, who then believe that what they say is the only truth, there is a great danger. And again, you can fight it only when you are yourself capable of being knowledgeable about what is being contested. I have had a national television debate with Dinanath Batra on his views on Hinduism. But I have written a book on Krishna. I have studied the Mahabharata. Please see the samvad between Shankaracharya and Madhu, Ramanuja on Dvaita Advaita. अरे eclecticism तो Hinduism की basis है. What does Shankaracharya say? न मैं राग द्वेष, न मैं मोह लोभ, मदो नैव मैं नैव मात्सर्य भाव, न धर्मो न चर्थो न कामो न मोक्ष, चिदानंद रूप शिवो हम शिवो. You know what this line is saying? It is disseminating the four purushas of Hinduism. Dharma, arth, kama, moksha. वो कहते हैं none of them matter. Only bliss and awareness. Chidanand. And I am Shiva, I am Shiva. अब इन लाइन्स के बाद how do you debate with people who have no knowledge of their own religion? ये समस्या है हमारे सामने कि how do you talk to them? That school of the 6 systems of Hindu philosophy, not one. न्याय योग द्वैत अद्वैत सांख्य पुरुष, I mean, please read them. Mimamsh and Charvak. The Charvak school says there is no God, it's an aesthetic school, atheist school. We have the offshoots of Tantrism. ये बड़ा eclectic religion रहा है. प्लीज एक चीज कर लीजिए, बहुत पतली सी किताब है, रीड एनी वन ऑफ द उपनिषद्स. Then it says Tattvam Asti, you are there. And when he is asked to define divinity, he says Neti Neti, Neti Neti, not this, because any definition will circumscribe the absoluteness of the absolute. So you come from this parampara, bhai. कोई को वैलेंटाइंस डे पे पार्क में ये बैठा हो तब उसको हम पीटने चले जाते हैं. ये अरे कुछ पढ़ा है यार, आप लोग भी कम पढ़िए वो सब. कृष्णा की रास लीला पढ़ा है, विष्णु पुराण, शिव पुराण, रीड द भागवत, not Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Puran. It's a great civilization. We try to understand. You are, see, one of the things about young civilizations is they are simple. One of the things about ancient civilizations is that they are complex. There is nuance of thought. There is element of dissent and debate. Shankaracharya revived Hinduism in the 9th century by holding Shastras starting from the south right up to the north. He traveled across the country in a debate, not a diktat. तो कौन बात कर सकता है, बात कर सकता है? कुछ हम लोग आप लोग पढ़ लेंगे तभी तो रोक सकेंगे.
Thank you. I think a lot of thoughts and emotions have been stirred by Dr. Varma's speech today. I would request Dr. Chaturvedi to please present a small token of our gratitude to Dr. Varma.
That's one of the advantages of sending your biodata in advance. Because the institute asked me for it. Chaturvedi sir knew of my passion for Krishna and my book on Krishna. By the way, it's a Penguin book. It was called Krishna the Playful Divine when it was first published by Penguin. Many editions. But now it's republished as the Book of Krishna. कभी आप लोग को वक्त मिले मैनेजमेंट से तो सबसे बड़े मैनेजमेंट गुरु को पढ़िए.
I would now like to request Dr. Anupam Varma, our Deputy Director, to please offer the vote of thanks.
Our chief guest on this 27th Foundation Day, Dr. Pavan Kumar Varma, our director Dr. Chaturvedi, Sangeeta ji, distinguished guests, fellow colleagues who have been felicitated today, officials and staff, and dear students. As we come to the end of this function, I feel humbled and privileged to extend this vote of thanks to Dr. Pavan Varma and everybody else. I'll have to be very brief because Dr. Varma has to run to some other engagement. I can only say that we are indeed fortunate and privileged to have amongst us today a man of letters, a diplomat, a politician, a distinguished writer, and an academician in the real sense. His talk today on being Indian and becoming Indian has been very illuminating and has touched the right chords, as was evident from the reaction of these students. And if I can say, he has touched the right chords among the faculty members also, if the statements made by Dr. Day and Himanshu Tiwari are to be understood properly. The way Dr. Varma took us to our journey of progress as Indians and its significance was marvelous. The need to introspect who you are and the responsibility that devolves on you, the originality and the innovation is the key. Don't be unidimensional. The learnings and the takeaways from his address, which has been very thought-provoking, are many, and I'm sure these students and indeed every one of us stand benefited. On behalf of Bibliothek Management, our Director Dr. Chaturvedi, and all of us present here, I deem it a great honor to convey our sincere gratitude and thanks to Dr. Varma. I would like to thank all my colleagues who have been felicitated today on completion of their 10 years at Bibliothek. They have been the architect of Bibliothek's success. I wish them well and even more success in future. Thank you all.